What's up, y'all? Hope y'all doing well. We are back on World. However, I really don't want to talk about World today. Today's video is really going to be about the future of Need for Speed. Now, I'm reporting this super late. In fact, I kind of forgot about it for a second. However, if you're not in the loop, there actually won't be any future Need for Speed games for a while. And that's basically because the team has been set out to help out with Battlefield and probably some other projects. And man, I don't really know what to feel about that, you know? The fact that, it's been over 2 years since Unbound came out. And people, I assume, were expecting, I was expecting a game to come out in 2024, which is why when I saw all these sales for Unbound from the past year, I was like, alright, there's probably a new game coming out, so they're probably just selling this thing for one more time. And honestly, even when I downloaded Unbound, I was like, cool, I get to have basically a year of me playing this game, which isn't too bad because paying $4 for a year of gameplay for a game that I'm not crazy interested in is okay, However, it seems that things have shifted, and man, Unbound, I gotta say, man, Unbound is just, I feel like there was so much more to Unbound that just wasn't finished. I know it's crazy because Unbound technically had, I think, game came out in 2022, so probably at least 2 to 3 plus years of development. However, when you play through the story, it's just, the single player content of the game is just so lacking, and it feels, and the way the progression of the story is, the plot and everything, it feels like there are so many things cut out. And knowing what happened to Most Wanted 2012, I have a feeling it was the same case. Now, obviously, every game has a lot of cutout content. Developers, they want to do so much more. However, because of time constraints, because of shareholders, money, and all that, you got to cut some things out. However, it really felt like Unbound's direction was a little lackluster, because as I was playing through the game, it felt a little monotonous, which, to be fair, Most Wanted, Carbon, all the Golden games, they are actually the same in that aspect. It really is a rinse and repeat. However, I think there's certain charm and care into the gameplay that allowed you to keep playing. Because obviously, racing games are not about stories. However, the story will help you keep yourself engaged with the game. And I do think that one thing that even Heat does and Unbound does, and I think Payback too, those games which I feel like cause them to fall in their story and their engagement was the fact that there's characters present. I know Heat and Unbound, you are that character. However, compared to games like Most Wanted, Carbon, even Undercover, Most Wanted, Need for Speed 2015, you are not shown at all. So you can really be you, and it allows you to use your creativity to visualize yourself in it, rather than seeing another character on screen. And the reviews kind of show Unbound is a little meh. It has mixed reviews on Steam compared to Heat, which is actually really positive. I didn't expect that. But as you can see on the Steam charts, yeah, Heat is just doing so much better. Even though it's an older game, less updates. Unbound just stopped getting updates. The updates were all great. However, if you're not into multiplayer racing, they're kind of pointless. And also, a lot of the content is locked away by speed passes and all that, which, man, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not trying to pay more. This is the idea, gaming now is really all about season passes, loot boxes, and all that stuff. it's just very hard for me as a player who is more interested in single player content, even though, yes, I play University World, which is not a single player at all. However, that's a free game and you don't have to pay extra for anything, which allows me to enjoy it. However, for a game that's essentially the latest Need for Speed, and it's kind of, hasn't really been updated too much, it's a little stale, there's really no reason of going back to it. Especially because the game is not an MMO or anything where it encourages you to be social. After a couple hours of playing, there's really no point, There's no achievements to grind, no cars to really collect. Now, I'm saying that as if there's not like a whole bunch of playlists that allow you to unlock things and such like that. However, it's just the vibe is really different. And really, it just doesn't get me as excited to play that game compared to World, for example. Now, obviously, there might be nostalgia and childhood memories that cater me towards World compared to Unbound. However, again, we've progressed so much with technology. It feels that because of the fact that, at the end of the day, these products need to turn out a profit. There's just so much being restricted. Because with today's technology, we could definitely do so much more. All the ideas that were envisioned back in the 2000s, the 90s, could easily be envisioned today to a much greater extent. However, it just seemed like it all just got thrown away. And even if you ask non-racing people, I'm pretty much the only person that I know who plays racing games IRL. So when I ask other people's opinions about racing games, really, they just play it just to drive a car for a little bit, and that's about it. So honestly, I think the product right now caters to them. And I don't know how to feel about that, because it doesn't really create much memories. Anyways, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a good one. Peace.